A woman is standing in the sunlit kitchen of a $2 million beachfront home, holding a glass of champagne, smiling at a man who is not her husband. She believes she has won. She spent 4 months quietly stealing $300,000 from the man she is married to. She forged his signature on a federal mortgage document. She used his credit score, his income history, and his identity to secure a luxury property she intends to share with someone else. She has already planned the divorce. She has already calculated what she will say in court. She has already decided what version of events she will present to the judge. What she has not accounted for is that her husband discovered everything 18 days ago and has been waiting with the specific patience of someone who does this professionally for her to walk all the way to the closing table before he drops the guillotine. Stay with me. Most betrayals are crimes of emotion. They are impulsive, poorly planned, and they collapse under the weight of a single forgotten receipt or an unlocked phone screen. But occasionally, a betrayal is not a mistake. It is a project, a calculated, multi-month operation designed not just to leave a partner, but to financially execute them on the way out, to drain their equity, steal their identity, and leave them buried under the legal wreckage of a life they believed was completely secure. When someone builds a plan like this, they are counting on one specific weakness in their target, the assumption that heartbreak is disabling, that a person who loved you deeply will be too shattered by the emotional reality to read the financial documents carefully. This is the story of Elias and Julianne. It is a single, documented story of the most sophisticated financial betrayal we have ever covered on this channel, and the most precise, patient, and legally devastating response to that betrayal that we have ever seen. Welcome back to Venture and Karma. Hit the like button right now if you believe that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who already knows everything and has not yet decided to show it. Let's get into it. Part 1. The Anomaly. Elias was a senior actuary at a global insurance conglomerate. His job, reduced to its essential function, was to find the thing that did not belong, to look at a system that appeared stable and functional and locate the precise mathematical point where it was quietly failing. He was exceptionally good at it. He had been married to Julianne for 7 years. She was a high-end interior designer, charismatic, social, constantly in motion. Their arrangement was comfortable and clearly defined. Elias managed the long-term investments and the tax infrastructure. Julianne managed the household accounts and the day-to-day cash flow. He trusted her completely. On a Tuesday evening in late October, Elias was clearing old notifications from a secondary email address, a legacy account he used almost exclusively for tax filings and property records. In the spam folder, there was an automated message from the county property assessor's office. Standard language, routine reassessment notification. The address it referenced was not their home. It was a luxury coastal property 3 hours south of the city, a property Elias had never heard of, listed under a newly formed LLC, with Elias listed as the personal guarantor on a $1.6 million mortgage. His full legal name, his date of birth, a masked version of his social security number. An ordinary person would have called the assessor's office immediately. An ordinary person might have walked down the hallway and asked their spouse directly what was happening. Elias was not an ordinary person. He closed the email. He said nothing. He waited until Julianne left for dinner, and then he sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and began to isolate the variables. Part 2. The Blueprint. It took Elias 4 hours to map the complete architecture of what his wife had built. The owner equity line of credit tied to their primary residence had been systematically drained over 4 months, not in large visible withdrawals, in dozens of small structured transfers designed to stay below automated fraud thresholds. $311,000 moved in precise increments to a shadow account registered under the LLC he had just discovered. The coastal property was co-owned by Julianne and Marcus, a luxury real estate broker she had introduced to Elias 14 months earlier as a professional contact. The picture assembled itself without requiring interpretation. Marcus had poor credit. Julianne had used a forged power of attorney document bearing Elias's signature to leverage his spotless 820 credit score and his documented income history as the primary guarantor on a $2 million mortgage. She had then used the stolen equity as the cash down payment. In 3 weeks, the final escrow was scheduled to close. Julianne and Marcus would receive the keys. Julianne would file for divorce, liquidate whatever remained of the joint accounts, and leave. Because Elias was listed as the guarantor on the forged documents, when the coastal mortgage eventually defaulted, the bank would pursue him for the full balance. She was not simply leaving him for another man. She was engineering his financial destruction as the mechanism of her escape. Elias sat with this information for a long time. Then he deleted his browser history, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed. Think about that for a moment.
He closed the laptop. He walked down the hallway. He got into bed next to a woman he now knew had spent 4 months constructing a plan to ruin him. And he went to sleep. Because Elias understood something that separated him from every other person in every other story we have ever covered. He understood that Julianne had committed federal wire fraud, identity theft, and mortgage fraud, but she had not yet closed the deal. If he showed his hand now, she could claim verbal permission. She could claim confusion about the documents. She could hire an attorney and spend years arguing about intent. But if he let her walk all the way to the closing table and push the final button herself, every single action would be documented, time-stamped, and entirely her own. Elias did not want to stop her. He wanted her fingerprints on the detonator. Part 3. The 18 Days. For 18 days, Elias lived 2 lives simultaneously. To Julianne, he was exactly the husband he had always been: quiet, reliable, slightly distracted by work. He asked about her projects. He made dinner on the nights she was home. He smiled when she mentioned having to travel for what she called design consultations. In parallel, he was moving with the precision of a man who bills his expertise by the hour. He retained a partner in a corporate litigation firm with a specific background in financial fraud recovery. He engaged a digital forensics investigator who documented the full chain of transfers from the equity line to the shadow account. He obtained certified copies of the forged power of attorney and commissioned a handwriting analysis confirming the signature was not his. He then contacted the Federal Compliance Division of the bank holding the coastal loan, not a branch manager, not a loan officer, the compliance director responsible for reporting mortgage fraud to federal authorities. Elias presented the complete file. The director moved immediately to void the loan. Elias made one request. He asked the bank to allow the transaction to proceed to the absolute final stage of the closing process, to flag the final wire transfer not as a routine cancellation, but as an active federal fraud event, triggering mandatory law enforcement notification at the precise moment the transfer was initiated. The bank agreed. Elias thanked the director, drove home, and made pasta for dinner.
Part 4. 0 Hour. The morning of the closing, Julianne packed a large suitcase. She told Elias she had a major installation project that would keep her on site for several days. She kissed his cheek at the front door. He told her to drive safely. He watched her car disappear around the corner. He finished his coffee. He drove to the office. At 9:30 that morning, Julianne and Marcus sat down at the conference table of the Coastal Title Company. Crystal glasses of sparkling water, a thick folder of closing documents, the escrow officer smiling across the table. Julianne opened her banking application. She navigated to Elias's high-yield savings account, which she still held administrative access to, and entered the final wire transfer of $40,000 to cover the closing costs and transfer taxes. She pressed submit. A green confirmation appeared on the screen. Transfer initiated. She signed the final page of the closing documents and pushed them across the table. The escrow officer collected the papers, typed on her keyboard, and then stopped. She typed again. "That's unusual," the officer said. "The wire is showing a compliance flag. Let me call our receiving bank to clarify." Julianne kept her expression neutral. "It's a large transfer, probably a standard security hold." The officer picked up the phone. She spoke quietly for less than 30 seconds. When she set the phone down, her face had changed completely. She stood up, collected the entire folder of documents, and walked out of the conference room. The door locked behind her. Julianne looked at Marcus. 7 minutes passed. Marcus tried the door handle. Julianne opened her banking app. The screen showed a single line of red text: "Account suspended. Contact Fraud Division immediately." She opened her credit card application. Access denied. She dialed Elias's number. It rang twice and transferred to voicemail. The conference room door opened. 2 uniformed officers, 1 plainclothes detective from the Financial Crimes Unit. The detective looked at Julianne with the particular lack of expression of someone who has done this many times and finds none of it surprising. "Julianne Vance?" She could not form a complete sentence. "Please stand and place your hands behind your back." As the officer secured her wrists, the detective mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that her husband had delivered a comprehensive evidentiary binder to the district attorney's office the previous afternoon, that the bank had been instructed to allow the wire transfer to initiate specifically to satisfy the final threshold required for federal fraud charges, that the case had been essentially complete for 2 weeks. Julianne did not cry. She stood absolutely still in that glass-walled conference room, in the clothes she had chosen carefully that morning, and understood, in the specific way that certain truths arrive, that the man she had been sleeping next to for 18 days had known everything, had cooked her dinner, had kissed her goodbye at the door, had watched her drive away, and had let her walk, in her own time and entirely of her own will, directly into a federal arrest. The fallout was total. The mortgage was voided before the closing completed. The stolen equity was frozen in escrow and returned to Elias in full through a civil recovery judgment. Marcus lost his real estate brokerage license and faced co-conspirator charges that ended his career in the industry permanently. Julianne accepted a plea agreement to avoid federal prison, 5 years of felony probation, full financial restitution, a permanent criminal record that closed every door her profession had previously required to be open. She received no divorce settlement. The divorce was finalized in Elias's favor, quietly and without litigation, because there is very little a family court can do for a petitioner who is simultaneously facing federal fraud charges brought by the respondent. Elias sold the primary residence, recovered his equity, and relocated to a different city. He gave one interview to a financial fraud prevention publication about the case, speaking only in technical terms, and has not discussed it publicly since. When the journalist asked him how it felt to sit across the dinner table from someone he knew was trying to destroy him, Elias said he found it clarifying. He said that once you understand the full architecture of a risk, the emotional component becomes much less relevant. You simply manage the exposure, and you wait for the right moment to close the position. If this story stayed with you, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to show this channel to someone who might genuinely need to hear today that being underestimated is not a vulnerability. Sometimes it is the only advantage you need. Subscribe to Venture and Karma and tell me in the comments, at what exact moment would you have lost your patience? Could you have made dinner and said goodnight while knowing what you knew? Or would you have shown your hand too early? I read every comment. Keep your eyes open, and I will see you in the next one.